Hello and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media. We are an organisation that aims to reconnect people in conservation by holding live interviews on Facebook. We're trying to spread a bit of optimism and hope at a time where a lot of people are getting quite disheartened in the world, and by sharing these stories, hopefully this will give some peace of mind for some people. Today I am very happy. I am joined by Brennan PetersonWood, and he works for Conservation Research Africa. So, Brennan, I'm going to hand over to you. If you can tell us all about yourself, how you got involved in the organisation.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me on, and I hope everyone watching enjoys. So I'm currently the programs manager for Conservation Research Africa. We're based in Malawi, Southern Africa. So I became interested in African conservation during my undergrad. I did a semester study abroad program in northern Tanzania. So it was an ecology, wildlife management, social economic values course. And that really piqued my interest in African conservation, the wildlife, working with the professors there, seeing what they got to do on a daily basis, really intrigued me. So after I graduated, I worked in Tanzania for about 1.5 years with the elephant conservation program. And from there, jumped over the border to Malawi as a research assistant for Carnivore Research Malawi, which is one of our 2 programs. So Conservation Research Africa has 2 programs, Carnivore Research Malawi and African Bat Conservation. So I was based in Kasungu National Park, and we were doing large carnivore demographic surveys, prey surveys, really cool experience being able to live in the bush like that. So after my time there, I was back in the US working for the Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, doing a number of different environmental and wildlife survey jobs for them. And now I'm back here in Malawi. I came back in 2019 as the programs manager, and yeah, we're just carrying on with our 2 programs, like I mentioned, the carnivores and the bat research.
Excellent. I mean, we're going to drill down further into those as we go through the conversation. I know as well, one of the big parts of your organisation is a focus on applied research and management. Can you talk us through this, what it means and how it fits into your conservation goals?
Mm-hmm. So many developing countries have a lack of funding, right? And so that makes it very difficult for the wildlife and the parks authorities to make their management decisions for the parks. There's just a lack of resources, staff, vehicles, very basic stuff like that makes it difficult for them to even get an understanding of how many animals are in their park. Especially difficult to survey animals like large carnivores. They're nocturnal, they're elusive, animals like leopards, solitary. So CRA's goal is to fill that void and provide the park management authorities with the hard research and the hard data so that they can make a more informed decision when it comes to the management of the park. If they're looking at doing translocations, restocking prey, or bringing in carnivores, making decisions on development within the park, whatever it might be, our goal is to provide that research that they might not have the capacity or the funds to carry out themselves. So basically we work in multiple different parks and work in close partnership here in Malawi with DNPW, the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, and work with them to develop their management plans by providing the research to them for that.
Okay, excellent. And I know as well you have a focus on education and capacity building. Why are these so important to your goals? And what sort of changes have you seen since these are being implemented?
Yeah, so any conservation project, regardless of where you are in the world, education is a key component to it. And an educated populace is a big key to successful conservation. So our education approach is kind of 2-pronged. One, we work in schools, so from primary all the way up through some of the universities here. So at the primary level, it's just very basic stuff, but the curriculum here doesn't often include any sort of conservation modules or any ecology. So starting at a young age, we find very impactful, and children are very, very keen to learn. And then, of course, they go home and pass on what they learn to their parents. And that, I think, is often a more impactful way to reach people, is starting young with children. And then, so the other half is also working with like rangers and park management authorities, providing specialized skills that our staff have. So GIS, mapping, tracking, SCAT, IG, all kinds of different techniques and skills that they don't have the opportunity to learn. The resources and the funding just doesn't exist for them, and the opportunities for them to gain those skills are very limited. So that's the education component is hugely important to conservation, and we find, I think everybody who works in conservation finds that most people have only experienced wildlife, or often have only experienced wildlife in negative ways. So if you live near a park, maybe you have elephants crop raiding. If you're a subsistence farmer, every percent of your field that you lose is a percent of the year that you don't have food. If it's carnivores taking livestock, even attacking, killing people. If it's bats coming into your house, they can be smelly, they can be noisy, and so it's very simple stuff, but just teaching people the importance of wildlife, the ecosystem services that bats provide, the carnivores provide, the tourism dollars that wildlife brings in, and so those are key components of what we seek to do. Some of our specific projects are sponsoring like football and girls netball teams. So we have Bat FC and the Bat Queens netball team in the Long Way that we sponsor. And again, reaching children at that young age and providing or using sport as a vehicle to teach wildlife conservation, we find hugely impactful. And you drive to the village where those teams are based, and the kids chant Bat FC as you drive through, and that's great to see. Where normally the response is, oh, bats or hyenas, those are terrible things that need to be killed. So those are the goals of our education and capacity building, is to try and change the mindset and show the other side of wildlife, the importance of wildlife, and then also to build skills in the rangers, in the management authorities, in the university students, that then they can use in their day-to-day life and their jobs.
So I love all of that, and I absolutely love that the kids are chanting out about bats. So kind of delving a bit deeper and more into that. Bats at the minute, they've got a very bad reputation. They're also not seen as cute as like elephants or lions or any animals like that. Why are they so important to the ecosystem? And because of their reputation, is it a harder kind of sell to them preserve and conserve these animals?
Yeah, absolutely. The struggle of trying to study and conserve non-charismatic animals is a struggle that everyone faces around the world. And bats have that reputation. Although, I think if a lot of people saw what a lot of bats look like, they'd be surprised at how cute some of them are. So they're massively important for the ecosystem. The fruit bats are pollinators of almost every tropical fruit: bananas, mangoes, papaya, coffee, chocolate. They obviously eat insects, so reducing malaria, eating crop pests, different beetles. Their guano can be used as fertilizer. It's very it's a natural fertilizer, obviously, so it's a lot a lot easier on the environment than artificial fertilizers. It's free. If it's so that's one thing we do is collect guano in a humane way. 'Cause obviously our staff have the skills and the ability to do that, and then supply that in various ways to the communities. So those are just kind of the highlights of what makes bats important. They're facing huge habitat loss here in Malawi, and so that, as a result, there's a lot of conflict with humans and bats, primarily of bats ending up in people's houses. Certain species can be quite loud. Their urine can be smelly. Of course, the guano can build up, depending on how many. You can have thousands of bats in a house. And so, again, that goes back to our education of working to educate people and build capacity in how to, one, keep their houses bat-proof, but two, also teach them the importance of bats, because usually the response is fumigate the bats or kill them in some manner. And people are usually very responsive when we point out, the reductions in malaria, the reductions in crop pests, all of the fruits and foods that people eat. So again, that's kind of what the focus of starting the Bat FC and the netball teams were in the little area that where offices and camp is in the Longway. Try and spread that message and work with people in those communities to coexist with bats.
I think that's important as well, is to make it relevant to them, with you highlighting things like malaria reduction and pest reduction as well. Mm-hmm. Then they're actually going to see the importance. It's no good just saying you need to look after these animals. You need to kind of give them a reason to want to look after them.
Exactly. The intrinsic value is always there, but unless there's an economic, monetary, or ecosystem service value, you need to attach those as well to really convince people.
And then what about when it comes to funding? Are you funded by donations and that kind of thing? And then again, does it make it harder to get funding when it's seen an animal that, as you say, is not seen as cute? I mean, I think those little faces that we just pulled up now are very cute, but how does that work?
Yeah, our funding is a mix of grants and donations and income from different things like university field courses. So our charity, our Conservation Research Africa, is based in the UK, which has quite an active bat research community. And so, I think that's beneficial to us. And our staff are. Our director and our bat research manager are both well connected in that UK community as well. So that helps to bring in funds. But I'm sure if you put a GoFundMe campaign for bats and one for elephants, elephants would bring in far more. And unfortunately, that's kind of the reality.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other part of your organisation is working with carnivores. Again, you kind of touched on it a little bit briefly, but can you talk about that in further detail? And is it mainly the human-wildlife kind of conflict that is the issue here?
Yeah. So the biggest conflict that we face is with spotted hyenas. They're quite wide-ranging in Malawi. They're not just restricted to national parks or reserves or protected areas. They're quite widespread in village areas. So livestock losses, direct attacks on people. It's rare, but it happens. And so those are conflict situations that we seek to mitigate and also understand what drives those. So part of our research for the carnivore side of things is working. We have networks of facilitators, usually chiefs or high-ranking people in the villages, and they're in constant contact with us, working to provide reports basically anytime there's an attack on livestock or on people. So the idea eventually is to develop sort of a predictive system, so we can say, okay, it's these species of livestock are attacked more frequently in this kind of enclosure or lack of enclosure. human attacks usually occur, at night, solitary people without a light, maybe they've been drinking. And so when we go into rural communities, or even in the Longway, because there's urban hyenas that live in the middle of the capital city. That's actually, this little picture of a cub is one of the recent additions to the urban clan. So we can give people direct, easy to follow advice on how to protect themselves and their livestock, and also why they should protect animals like hyenas and leopards, which to them might seem like just a nuisance. Like I was saying earlier, they rarely see the benefits of wildlife. It's only the negatives. So talking about the ecosystem services that hyenas provide, especially in the urban clan in the Longway, most of their diet, or a large chunk of their diet, is stray dogs. So through that, they're reducing rabies transmission through stray dogs, and packs of stray dogs can be dangerous. Probably more dangerous to children or people going for a run early in the morning than a hyena. Hyenas, honestly, if you leave them alone, they're usually going to leave you alone. So it's the same situation as bats again. Leopards are big, pretty animals. Lions, big, pretty animals. But things like jackals, hyenas, they're seen as pests and as dangers. There's a lot of traditional beliefs around the hyenas as well. So that further complicates kind of the outreach and education side.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then what's the status when, as you was talking earlier as well about leopards, what's the status with leopards, and what are the issues here? Is that them taking livestock?
It happens occasionally. The leopards here in Malawi are more confined to the national parks than the hyenas, which are quite widespread. So people living on the borders of the national parks, the majority of them are unfenced or minimally fenced. So yes, there absolutely is livestock and occasional human attacks from leopards. But leopards are more secretive. They're more shy. They're solitary. So most of the negative interactions with large carnivores come from the spotted hyenas here in Malawi. And I think, again, it going back to the charismatic thing, a hyena and a leopard. Leopard's a lot more pretty, and a hyena is often they're quite aggressive with each other. So a lot of times their ears are tatty when they're older. Their faces, they have scars, and they're cute when they're cubs, but when they're old, you can understand why people are scared of them and where the fear comes around hyenas.
And then when it comes to the research side, how does that work? Do you tag the animals? Do you have camera traps up? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all are both techniques we use. So we've done numerous camera trap surveys throughout national parks and in the Longway area. Some of our research out of Kasungu was recently published and provides some of the first leopard density studies for Miamba woodland habitat. So that was really cool to see that come out, and I know everyone involved with that. It's very pleased. We do satellite collars as well. That's our big push right now for the urban hyena clan. Like most African cities, the Longway is rapidly expanding. A lot of it's unplanned, and so it's kind of at a key junction to understand those hyenas' movements, their activity patterns, their home ranges, den selection, their prey items. So we analyze their scats for diet, and use the satellite collars to collect the rest of that information, as well as camera traps that we have at their dens. So we can monitor birth rates, death rates, clan composition. All multifaceted approach. And specifically with the urban hyena clan, the trend globally is urbanization. You already see, I believe, Mumbai, India, in the Planet Earth, where they showing the leopards that are right in the mix, and people often have no ideas. The Longway is a similar situation like that, where you have large carnivores, you know, in residential areas, and a lot of people don't realize it. And that's a trend that is expected to continue around the world, and particularly in Africa. So if we can take advantage of the unique situation that the Longway has now, and you know, learn about urban hyena ecology, it can be applied to other cities and other researchers across the continent.
I love that. I mean, I'm so jealous of your job. It sounds like you've got some incredible stuff going on, and you're getting to do some incredible work. If people back home are watching and they're thinking, that's what I want to do, I want to be doing something similar to you, what advice would you give to someone who's following in your footsteps or wants to follow in your footsteps? And what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were first starting out?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and I feel like it's difficult to answer. Conservation is very pretty much everybody I know in conservation kind of got to where they were through different paths. There isn't one set, you know, you get this degree and you do this internship and you pass this exam and now you're a lawyer or whatever. So I think the biggest thing, and what I found worked for me, was one, being very persistent, especially as you're just starting out. Email everyone you can, and just even if they have, you know, no openings, just start talking to people. Get your name out there, and eventually you'll find something. If you want to work, if you're you know, in the US or the UK or Europe and want to work in Africa, I would say try and find an internship or short-term volunteer, something, getting here and just getting a taste for it, getting that little bit of experience, starting to meet people. I think that's the most important. Unfortunately, it's a very competitive field and there's very little funding available. So don't expect to make any money. But it is, yeah, you get to do some incredible stuff. You get to see, you know, just amazing landscapes and wildlife here. I would say, you know, do little things to set you apart. Maybe take a short mechanics course or touch up on your GIS. Little things like that, especially field skills. You know, the employers have, you know, millions of CVs and resumes sent, and you know, everybody has a degree in this, experience in that. But so little things that might set you apart. If there's something that you're uniquely good at, I think highlight that and emphasize that. And again, being able to, field skills, being able to live in the bush, that's going to make you, you know, a more competitive candidate. So that's what I would emphasize. In terms of advice, I guess just come in with patience, and, you know, especially if you're coming from the Western world, you know, you're used to things being run on time and, you know, a more high-paced work environment, and it's not really how it always works. In countries like Malawi, things just operate slower. And so you just have to be prepared for that, and, you know, don't let it get you down, and just carry on, and know that your successes will come eventually. But you might struggle at first, or run into a lot of barriers. So I think that's what I would say. I'm just going to turn that light on real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
Should I sit in front of it, maybe? That'd be better.
Yeah. There we go. That's better. Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
I mean, going back to what you were just saying as well there, I mean, I completely agree. I remember when I spent some time living in the bush, I very quickly had to learn that you have to get your hands dirty. Many a time I'm putting vehicles out of the mud, and you're covered in flies and mosquitoes. And it's not as glamorous as some people kind of envision. Do you think people should go and try it for a little bit before committing to going for jobs?
Absolutely. And like you said, you know, some people think, oh, I'm going to go study carnivores. It's going to be safari. I'm going to be driving and looking at leopards and hyenas all day. The reality is they're difficult animals to see. A lot of the areas, like the reason CRA is here in Malawi is because Malawi in the past was hard hit. Their wildlife, suffered a lot of poaching and habitat loss, and so there aren't many carnivores in animals anymore. Things are changing. The government and other research groups have really made big strides in the last few years, and that's really encouraging to see. But yeah, you can, when I was a research assistant in Kasungu, I was there for 8 months, and I never actually saw a leopard. Saw them on camera traps, saw the footprints outside my tent in the morning. Never actually saw one in person. And there's always report writing and vehicle maintenance and getting, like you said, getting stuck in the mud and spending the night in the vehicle because you broke down out in the bush. And so absolutely, I think trying it out, if that's doing a short volunteering, finding an internship, or just visiting. If you're traveling, just email projects where you are and just say, can I come shadow you guys for a day, something like that. And then I think it'll give you a taste and see how you actually like it.
And then we can't talk about anything at the minute without discussing COVID and how that's been impacting organizations around the world. How has it impacted your work? I know that you were saying earlier that Malawi is pretty much operating okay, but again, you are expecting you get funding from overseas and that kind of stuff. So how has it impacted? And then if people back home watching want to help, what can they do to help?
Yeah, it's like every conservation project has suffered. Borders being shut, airports being shut, different charities depending on, or NGOs depending on where you're registered. Your home country might have different rules and what actually the reality is in the country you're in. And so, maybe you're flying people back home. Plane tickets during COVID, were increased drastically. For us, our funding is a mix of grants and like university field courses who come and learn from our staff different field skills. Citizen science groups, gap year students, same thing, coming to learn, get a taste of conservation, wanting to contribute in some way. Obviously, with airports being shut and borders being shut, those were canceled last year. Things will still be canceled this year. So yeah, funding's tight. Countries like Malawi, it's landlocked, so all of its food, vehicles, car parts, equipment, it's trucked in from South Africa or from Tanzania. Fuel prices have gone up, food prices have gone up, availability of car parts difficult to find. So absolutely, COVID's had a big impact. And then on local communities, again, food prices going up, fuel prices going up. There's been increases in poaching as well. So now you're having conservationists, rangers, anti-poaching teams facing loss of salary and increased poaching. So difficult for everyone involved in the field. If you would like to support CRA, you can visit our website. There's a PayPal link there. So conservationresearchafrica.org. We'd be very appreciative, and the bats and the carnivores would also be very appreciative.
Okay, I've only got one more question left, and then we'll start to wrap up. If anyone back home is wanting to ask me questions, Brennan, then please do just pop it in the comments, and we'll put it to him. So I just wanted to know, I always like to end on a bit of a positive note. From all your time working in conservation and the work that you're doing now, do you have a favourite success story, and can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I'll give you one from the bats and the carnivore team. Like I was talking about, our main focus for the urban carnivores right now, for the hyenas, is this satellite collar program. And again, COVID's really impacted that. Things have been delayed time and time again with, getting the right equipment in place, having a vet available, everything. Having borders shut has made that difficult. We did manage, just before COVID hit Malawi in 2020, we managed to get one satellite collar on, a female hyena in the urban clan. And so that was really, really cool to be a part of. And then being able to see her movements through the city, it was very surprising. And also kind of nerve-wracking waking up every morning and checking the email to see where she'd been. Some very urbanized areas, but yeah, also just really neat to see how a large carnivore with such a negative stigma against it manages to eke out a living in an urban environment. So just very impressive and gives you a lot of respect for the hyenas and what they're able to do. So as a team, that was a big success. Everybody worked really hard. It's tough. Urban carnivores, I find, tend to be a lot more wary and maybe even more intelligent, I guess it seems like at times. I mean, the ways that they manage to avoid, our attempts to catch them. It's definitely a game of cat and mouse. On the bat side, there's very little research that's been done throughout Africa and Malawi in general on bats. Just basic stuff of how many species are here, what habitat requirements do they need, what are their feeding requirements, roosting requirements. There's a lot of unknowns. And so, yeah, over the years, the bat team has managed to, they've caught species that were previously unknown to Malawi, so range expansions for them, and also working with our partners, the National Parks and Wildlife Department, working to protect multiple species of bats here in Malawi. So that's been really cool to see, for those bats to receive that protection and being able to work with the relevant authorities to protect their habitats and their feeding requirements. So yeah, it's always, like I said, everything's slow and a struggle in conservation, but when you get opportunities to take part in research that actually comes to fruition in protections or new understandings for the animals, it's always makes it worth it.
I mean, feeding kind of off that, we've just got a question coming through from Laura Luthi, and she's asking, she said, first of all, thanks for the interesting talk. And she was wondering if you are still able to take research assistants onto the projects during this time.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on what country people are coming from and what restrictions those countries might have. But yes, we are looking for research assistants. Those positions are sort of always on a kind of opening on a rolling basis for us. So if people are interested, they can send a message to our Facebook or Instagram pages. So we have Carnivore Research Malawi and African Bat Conservation. So research assistants work one team or the other. There is a little bit of crossover, but yeah, if you're interested in bats or carnivores, check out our social media and send us a message there, or find our emails on the webpage, the Conservation Research Africa website.
And do they have to have any, what kind of background do they need to have to be able to be a research assistant? Do they need to have degrees, or can it be someone that's just very passionate about the animals?
We usually look for people with a minimum of a bachelor's degree. But if someone has, tons of experience, sometimes experience can be more beneficial. So yeah, usually a little bit of experience and a bachelor's degree. But really, if you have the basic skills and you have the passion and you have the ability to live and work in a country like Malawi, which is often very difficult, that's what's going to make you successful. There's plenty of people with masters and PhDs and loads of experience, but they wouldn't be able to deal with the day-to-day hardships of Malawi. So if you have that, then please send us a message. We're always looking.
We've got a question coming through from Stacey Saddlefield as well. Hi, Stacey. And she's asking, with education, are you finding the attitude towards the hyena is changing?
Yeah, that's definitely probably the most difficult mindset to change. You're talking about thousands of years of people living with hyenas and losing livestock and relatives, families, friends. And like I mentioned earlier, there's also, a lot of traditional beliefs around hyenas involved, sometimes there's beliefs old women turn into hyenas at night to get revenge on someone who has wronged them, different things like that. So it's a very, very tricky subject. But yes, I would say in the villages where we've had contact, for example, one of a satellite collared hyena had a den very near two villages. And so those villages we visited a lot, worked with the chiefs there, placing camera traps. So, we're putting a camera trap in a very remote exposed area. And there's always risk of theft and damage. But yeah, you working with the chiefs, explaining the benefits of hyenas and the point of our project. At first, there's hesitation, and people kind of wondering what are these guys up to. But in the end, I find most part people are very receptive, and also then happy to assist. Checking the camera, making sure that it's not being vandalized by people from other areas who might not know what's going on. So yeah, it's slow, but I do think people eventually come around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect to be changing attitudes overnight, especially if you're dealing with cultures that have had this problem or these ideas about hyenas for so many centuries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Thank you so much, Brennan. We've got some really nice comments coming through. We've got Christina Sheehan saying some excellent information. Don Gordon Pearson saying wonderful to hear all about the work going on to teach the younger generation, and that's the key to change. So we're going to wrap up now. Is there anything that you want to finish with before we say goodbye?
Well, just thank you for having me, and I appreciate everybody watching and the questions. Please continue to follow our social media. We're always trying to post pictures and updates. And yeah, had a great time talking with you. And so thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you everyone back home for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you're watching this and it's not live, then please do feel free to make any comments or ask any questions, and one of us will be happy to get back to you. Also, please do feel free to like, comment, and share it. The more people that see these videos, the more people can get engaged, and hopefully more work can be done to help these animals. Thank you so much, Brennan, for coming on, and thank you again, everyone back home, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good day.